So, this is Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. This is one of the most famous novels in the world, I would say. I should mention that I'm not a very literate person. I don't know much about literature. I've only read one book, one Russian book before this, and it was because of high school. Most of the books I've read in my life are about history or planes or things like that. So in terms of literature, I'm not very well. I don't have a lot of knowledge about that. So this is coming from a person who is very new to Russian literature. This is technically my first Russian literature book. So please bear that in mind when I talk about this. I began to read this because I met a really nice Russian friend, and she is very fond of Russian literature, and she recommended me her favorite book, which is Crime and Punishment. So, first of all, I definitely recommend reading this. It's as good as people say it is. A lot of people say that it's a must read, that it presents real interesting ideas, and I know it's a little bit daunting seeing that it's about like 700 pages long, but it's definitely worth it. Like if even if you're not much into literature as I am, it's definitely worth a shot. Trust me. And if you're a very literate person and know about a lot about books, well, it must be the case that you already read this. But what is it about? The general summary of it is that there's a guy, actually a very normal guy in the beginning, who's called Raskolnikov, who lives in St. Petersburg. He's a law student. Well, he was a law student, and he murders an old lady, a pawnbroker, who was described by him and many other people in the book as a no good lady who would take money from poor people or do unfair trades in order to benefit her. She also had a half sister. I think it was a half sister. Well, she was special needs, and she was basically horrible to her. So not a very good person described by him and other people. It was an old lady, nevertheless, and he killed her. And that's where the book becomes interesting, because the reason why he killed her and the way he reacts to his actions are not similar to any other crime novel I've read or any crime history I've heard. Because usually crimes are well thought of or are committed because of passion or vengeance or love or basically just or a psychopath. But in this case it was very different, and I think the most important thing about this book for me was the idea behind the murder, why Raskolnikov did it, and why he felt almost justified to do it. He was not a crazy person, he was not ill, he was not a psychopath, nor did he hate the lady. It was not a hate murder. She didn't love him either. He had this idea. There was a fictional article written by him, published in a newspaper, I think, where he talked about a very interesting idea. I think that's what stuck the most from me. It was the idea there are normal people, just you and me, just regular people, and there are the Napoleons or the extraordinary people. And the laws and everything that applies to the regular people do not necessarily apply to these special or extraordinary people like Napoleon. And he considered himself kind of a Napoleon. All throughout the book, he was very... Okay, he was not a psychopath, I think, but he was especially... he was socially awkward by his own choosing. He did not like to be bothered with. He did not embrace people coming to him, even though there are really nice people. He has an extremely good friend. He has a very loving mother, a very loving sister, and also a very special lady called Sonia, which basically is just a radio assumption. She's the best in the book. He has all these people that care for him, but he doesn't really care much for them, except he does. He does in a way that he did this murder. His plan was to eradicate this bad person from the world, and his action would be okay. His action would be forgiven because one bad action would be forgiven by him making 1,000 good actions with the money he would steal from her. He was a law student, but he was unable to pay for his studies, and he was basically, as he described, the last hope for his family. Her sister was engaged in a terrible marriage that was only going to get the money. It was basically a prostitution for her, and he didn't have a father. Her mother was very sick, so he becoming a law student and then an official was the only hope for his family. And the idea that he had was he would kill this lady, take them the things that she had, sell them, and with the money he would be able to pay off his studies and then have enough money to feed and maintain his mother, his sister. Everything would be fine in the end because of this one bad thing that he did. There would be a bunch of good things that he did. And that's what he referred to as the special people. The laws do not apply in this case because it compensates. Like the bad thing that he did would balance out with the good things that he did. He did not see himself in the same perspective as the rest of people socially. He felt he was above everyone else socially. And it's not only in this case, as I said, like he's very socially awkward. He did not like very long talks. He felt very nervous around people. Even in one case, he fainted in the police station. But he never really showed any remorse for killing this person. All throughout the book, I really thought that one of the main topics would be that he would feel regret for taking a life, and he would be like, oh my god, I'm a monster, I have to live with this. This topic is really never really touched. It's not even mentioned, I think. The only problem that he has after he murdered this person, it never comes from within him. You could argue probably it's manifested in some kind of illness he had, fine, but the bigger problem on most part of the book is him dealing with a police officer that is investigating this crime. And the way the police officer does this is that he does not directly approach him. The police officer, should I say investigator, he plays around with his suspect. He plays psychological games and is very much terrifying. The way that is written here, I think he's probably the best written character. My friend helped me with the Russian pronunciation, but it's Porfiri. Well, he's really well written because you get this image of this old kind of stubby officer investigator that means no harm. He really talks about just inconsequential things, about his wallpapers, or just talks about very casual things, like even friendly. And even though you know that he's an investigator and he's doing all of this to get information out, Raskolnikov himself mentioned this at one point. He's like, well, maybe I am, maybe I'm getting this. But him acknowledging it and then continue to talking about casual things, you never really know if he definitely knows or he's just playing the part. He's just waiting for I'm sorry, there's something flying on the window. There's a blue thing flying, whatever. You never really know if he knows or not, and all this tension of you can feel Raskolnikov, these tensions of, does he really know? Is he playing with the prey, or he really does not, and I'm completely safe. And several points he feels like, oh, he really doesn't know anything about him. He has another suspect. I'm free, but then he shows up again, and he says, yeah, I know it's you. And during all this time, the pressure of having these suspicions about Raskolnikov, it is more than he can take. It's worse than the punishment itself of going to prison, or in this case, going to Siberia. It is an incredible psychological game that is played, and it really gets to you. I'm gonna be honest, I had some nightmares with this because it reminded me a lot of the way special teacher I used to have back in flight school. It may apply to any teacher, but I remember we had simulator training, and I would be doing something on the plane that I wasn't very sure of, a procedure I didn't know, and he would just sit in the back quietly in the simulator, and I would do something that I didn't know if it was good or bad, and all that pressure of not knowing if I'm doing something wrong or not was terrible, was horrifying. I was absolutely terrified with that, because if he would tell me like, oh, what you did is wrong, I would be like, okay, fine. But the ambiguity of all of that was terrible, and then you would get like, okay, pause the simulation, and it gave me those vibes. Maybe it's a personal experience and why I connected so well with the main character and his experience with this whole ambiguity with a person of authority. But it really got to me, this book. But yeah, I think that's all the things I wanted to mention about it. As I said, it's a very big book. It's a very thick book with a lot of long expositions. That's the thing you will notice. There's a lot of very long monologues, and at first I thought they were a little bit boring, if I'm gonna be honest. But then I just embraced them. I just started to enjoy them the more and more, and by the end, I think probably the part that I enjoyed the most about this book was a very long monologue of drunk Razumihin. I can't pronounce his name, but Raskolnikov's friend gave a drunk monologue about talking nonsense, and that's what makes us human. And I really like that part, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm talking nonsense about a book. So yeah, Crime and Punishment, very nice book. Absolutely, like whatever people say about it, how great it is, it actually is. And from someone who doesn't really read that much, I loved it. So yeah, that's it.